What is going on, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the Heavy Metallurgy Album Club. I'm one of your hosts. I'm Marty. Hope you're doing well and had a good week so far. It's warm here again. I don't know what's going on. But hey, Kellen's here. How you doing, man?
Good. Happy to be back. We got a little bit of a unique lineup this week, so happy to have a guest jump through and join us. But doing well. I actually took the time to dive back in. For those who maybe aren't aware, I'm in the midst of a move, so I'm kind of divorced from all my collection. But I went through and storage and found a few things that I could at least listen to while I'm cruising around in the car here. That's kind of been like my stereo system. Is just I still have a car with a CD player in it, which I absolutely love. I don't know if everyone out there does not have one, but it's a true joy for me right now, since the only stereo system I have access to. But yeah, just probably the first one I'll get out of the way. Here's a classic record I've talked about at length, being my favorite from the catalog. This is Symphonies of Sickness. So anyway, I go back and forth with some of the fellow album club members as to which is the best Carcass, but this is always in my mind the one you want to go with.
So good.
This one, kind of a little more of a punk choice, but this is The Exploited the Massacre. It's been a lot of fun listening to the
good shit. Metal Exploited is pretty good, you know.
Yeah. Anyway, there's a bunch of different Exploited records that are worth your time and enjoyable, but I pulled the Massacre and have been enjoying that. And then kind of changing pace here. This is Helvete, but this Moon Sorrow release, it's just two really long sort of epic tracks here. Mm-hmm. Comes a little bit later in their catalog in the 2000s, but there's like 4 or 5 Moon Sorrow records that I think are all pretty killer. This kind of sits in the middle of their catalog. Just two sweeping tracks here, but those have been my spinning around and driving in the car this week, what I've been listening to.
All right, good to see you. Logan, how's it going?
It's going pretty good. Cool to have Lee here.
Yeah, hell yeah.
I was bummed there was no pre-show, though. That's where I get all my notes from these past couple weeks. Now I had to do some actual writing at the last 30 minutes, but hey, I guess it's worth it to have.
God, that's a shallow pool of knowledge, Logan.
Sometimes it helps, I'll tell you.
More like a pothole with a little bit of water in it.
It has New Orleans in a nutshell for you right there.
There you go.
But over the weekend, went up to Charlotte, North Carolina, just for a quick, return pilgrimage back to where I used to live before moving down here. Had to break out old album club favorites, Weed Eater. Everyone worshipped this album, if I remember correctly.
That was your debut. That was your first pick, right? Wasn't that your first?
This was my first.
Yeah.
And we're not that I'm keeping track, but we're coming up on 2 years now of you guys screwing up and letting someone pick Sludge on here. So cheers, guys.
For his first pick, I was thinking this was a grave mistake bringing this guy on here.
It's 2 riffs for 40 minutes.
One more riff than on the Sleep Dope Smoker album.
I wanted to build up to the Dope Smoker, which I haven't done yet, but we'll get there, I'm sure. So yeah, had to revisit a lot of Weed Eater. And then upon my return to New Orleans, I was within like 2 miles of one of my favorite local record stores, Sisters in Christ, if you guys are familiar with these guys. It's the Dude and Thou. It's his record store. If anyone comes to New Orleans, I would highly recommend you come here. It's very metal and punk focused. It's absolutely the place to be. And I found some more sludge. Look at this. Brain Oil. Some California sludge. This is actually features the bassist from Autopsy. He's currently in Autopsy. I'm drawing a blank on what his name is off the top of my head. I'm grabbing a cat. But great. Yeah. Yes. Greg. Doesn't say his last name on here, but Greg. But,
Chandler? Is Chandler, or am I wrong by saying Chandler? No, that's... Never mind. I'll shut up.
Sorry, Greg. But Brain Oil, great aggressive, like slightly bluesy, but mainly attack-oriented sludge. And the beautiful thing is it's like 23 minutes. It's just kind of in and out. And yeah, it's got a bit of death metal intensity in there as well. Jeff's got us. Greg Wilkinson. Thank you, Jeff.
I wasn't even close.
And then finally, over the past couple months, I've really been getting into this album a lot more. The Gothan Stream from the Heavens, and it just made perfect sense to pull this a couple times in preparation for this disembowelment conversation. So the more I listen to this album, the more like it kind of unearths itself, and there's cool moments in every single song. And is it the first Funeral Doom album? Yes.
I don't know.
It for me though.
All right. Well, Jim is out on a family trip for a week or two, and we thought we'd get some boots on the ground from Australia for an Australian band, so gave our old buddy Lee a call. What's going on, Lee? How's it going?
Yeah, man, I've been really good. Interesting week so far. We're like 3 days, 4 days into it, depending on where you count from. But in between, I don't know if I can follow Logan's grabbing the cat and pulling it in and out. So I lost my train of thought. However, I don't know if you saw some of the Sunday show, but I've been subjected to a lot of... Aaron from Metal Theologian talks to my wife, and they discuss really obscenely bad music. And so I've got to be in that conversation, which is like, oh, you need to listen to this. And it's just been driving me absolutely nuts. So what I've been trying to deaden that pain with is like other crazy type of stuff. So this one, Macabre, and as soon as you guys did that thing, I went out and bought it.
I had to buy it too because I didn't have it.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting to get too. I found this on Amazon, believe it or not. There was only like the one thing, but so there's been that, which I'm really down with. I love this. Marty, I thought you might find some interest. I don't know if you know him. I picked this up a year ago in Texas. Forgot that I got it, and then remember going, oh shit, that's right. So I whacked it back on again. Now I'm going to pretend to say the name correctly. 2 ways. Google says it's Crew Cultum. I call it Crew Occultum. So any way you want to slice it. But basically this is Satanic Warmaster, early Satanic Warmaster worship. And I'm just down with that. So it's kind of melodic, it's raw, but it's got that cool sound that he used to have. So awesome. I think the bass player is in something else that's kind of good, but whatever that is, you think
I haven't heard of it.
Right?
No,
never
heard of it.
It's pretty good. And just because you guys did this thing on the Friday, which was the Apocalyptic Records. I've not heard this yet. It just came in today. It was sitting in a puddle, and I'm like, oh well, this is fucked. But oh boys, dwarf animals. So I love albums that sound like they're about to fall off the tracks. This one didn't just fall off the tracks; it just kept driving, and it made its own path. And I've only heard pieces of it. I haven't even cracked the cover yet. But this was sitting legitimately in water when we got home today.
Oh no!
But the album is it was protected by the small layer of bubble wrap that was around it. So I'm hanging to get into this. So the experimental thing is really starting to kick in. And if I may, I just wanted to show this just for this. Have you heard of this band, Marty? They're pretty good.
Yeah.
And then, and other than that, if I'm going to go ultra weird, good old Abergor. And I'm just, again, Abergor's a band that is just too, I don't know if they're too busy for their own good, but I'm trying to dissect it. I figured if I can listen to J-pop, fusion, bossa nova, fucking whatever I'm being subjected through with Aaron from Metal Theology, I can do this again. So I put this back on to see if I can stomach it. So I'm doing my Abergor phase.
The big reset.
Yeah.
Cleanse the airwaves of the weird shit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm doing my best.
All right. Well, thanks for joining us. Good to see you as always.
Yeah, man, it's good to be here.
Everybody does Warhammer 666, the band, also the YouTube channel, link in the description. And he also is a part of Fomorian Productions, which I did forget to put the link in the description. I'll have to do that after the show, but go check it out. And for me, I just cannot seem to let go of this Ulfhedner band. I have, this is their third album, Legged. Winter Worship from Norway. There's a Norwegian band. This album is great. Little underproduced, but yeah, paganish black metal, like I said, in the vein of Winder. Great. I love the melodies on it. Very pagan, very bouncy. colorful stuff, good dissonant but melodic black metal. I'm finally getting into some of my whatnot purchases. I got State of Triumph by Metallium, German power metal band. This shit's really good. Oh yeah. Yes. And if that doesn't sell you on it right there, there's something wrong with you. But German power metal, and it sounds like you would expect, but they're really energetic, really well done, aggressive power metal. I dig it. I picked up a couple Havakruunu EPs last time I was in Grand Rapids a week ago, and this is Rauta Ya Tolta Havakruunu. And it looks like a full length. I guess it's longish, but it's considered an EP. I was just happy to see a couple Havakruunu albums sitting at the shop, so I picked them up until I got home. I'm like, oh shit, these are EPs. I paid $26 for an EP. Well, yeah, but it's good. It's really good. And this is not available yet, but this is the Dehumanized EP by Vatar. This is Ken from the band Pan. His death metal project. Him and another guy, a friend of his, singing on it. Kind of proto-thrashy style vocals, but a good voice. Kind of old school Swedish death metal worship. Good shit. Coming out on Northern Spire Productions, which is Noah from The Glorious Dead and a bunch of other bands label. But today we are talking about the one and only full length from Melbourne, Australia's Disembowelment. This is Transcendence into the Peripheral. For those of you unfamiliar with Disembowelment, they were an Australian death doom band that formed in November 1989, featuring Renato Galina on guitar and vocals and Paul Mazziota on drums. In early 91, Jason Kells joined on lead guitar, and at the end of the year, the group's lineup was completed by Matthew Scaraju on bass guitar. In 1992, they issued an extended play, Dusk, on Relapse Records, and followed with a studio album, Transcendence into the Peripheral, the next year. They disbanded shortly thereafter, never having performed live. They're considered doom grind pioneers. And I think for pretty good reason. I'm wondering, who in this bunch has heard this album before? Logan, we'll start with you. Is this a new one for you?
No, this is one that I have visited a couple times over the years. I have not taken the deep dive album club style yet because I don't own it. It's that CD itself is kind of hard to come by. So never ended up really sitting, along with it. But the main reason I am familiar with this band and this album is because of Inverloch. This is basically it's the drummer and the bassist following up and kind of creating a project in the same style.
Yeah.
20 years later, they've got the EP and their one and only album, Distance Collapsed. And I absolutely love this thing. This is really my first exposure to this, two different styles shoved together. We've got blistering, intense death metal. I could see grind. I don't know about the grind tag, honestly, but I definitely death metal, right up, butt to butt with Funeral Doom to me. Just how slow and pulverizing and focused they get on these really long, drawn out sections. So yeah, absolutely, just a unique band. Inverloch's a unique band in of itself, but then, Disembowelment, doing it back in 1993, completely ahead of its time. I'm assuming. I mean, I don't know how you would describe their music to someone back in 1993. To me, thinking about it, it's once again Thurgothan, a little bit of that Thurgothan, just drawn out heaviness and atmosphere. There's a lot of atmosphere here too. But mixed with just random, very attack-oriented sections of Suffocation's Effigy of the Forgotten. And you just put a little bit of Dead Can Dance in there and, these odd kind of warm and comforting melodies, but they also feel kind of dissonant too. And you just sprinkle that over an hour-long runtime and you have this album. So this is definitely an in-depth album to listen to, and I think that's why I have never really super clicked with it, because it's impossible to check this out once, come back to it, 6 months later, and do rinse and do that for years and really kind of click with this album. I think this definitely deserves like the album club treatment and really sitting with it and focusing on it for an extended period of time. But with that being said, first impression is always like, wow, how are they just doing so much with, this Funeral Doom right here, and, like these two different styles, but they're making it work. And to me, they're successfully melding it. But at the same time, it all still feels like kind of clashed together and, just Frankenstein monster kind of. It's a very cool listen on the first listen for sure. And I mean, spoiler alert, the subsequent listens as well.
All right, Lee.
So I heard this album later after when it, I didn't hear it in 93 or 92, whenever it came out.
93, yeah.
But I heard it a little, it was only a few years later. It wasn't something where, by the time I would have heard it, I was already, the Morbid Angels and the Floridian death scene had kind of taken its hold of, it was Deicide or nothing. And when someone says, oh, this is an Australian death metal band without the internet, you kind of expect something in the same vein at least, and you don't get that with this. And so I remember thinking it wasn't digestible in any way. To me, it just sounded like a mess of a lot of different things going on. I gave it no mind and I let it go. So I was very much aware of it. And then you see over the years, it's like a lot of people really, really like this album. And, it seems to pop up a lot in, things like this. And so when you said, hey, you want to come on board? I was like, oh, I know this album. Not expecting much of it, but this is the thing with you guys, is that you throw me an album where I'm kind of already got my preconceived ideas. Now I'm 50, I'm no longer 16, right? So you're listening to it with a completely different mindset.
Musical history behind you,
This is nuts. Exactly what Logan said. Like, it's so dense. It's unsettling. There's it doesn't let you enjoy something for too long. It goes everywhere from like the really doomy stuff. There's blast beats that they almost don't work, but they just work enough just to give you something. And then they go again, and you don't get them again till tracks down. But when you're dealing with 14-minute songs, you're not putting this on to vacuum the house. Like you're sitting down, you're looking at it, you're kind of immersed in it. Otherwise, this is a wasted listen, I think. And I was listening to this, walking to work. I listened to it again, about 6 o'clock tonight, just so I could like really, get my notes straight. But this is, it seems to be a lot of almost, right? It's almost Autopsy. It's almost Drone, it's almost Funeral Doom, but it's nothing like those things. You know what I mean? There's just so much happening. So it doesn't ever let you get your bearings on it. It never comes back to the same riff. It's such a crazy listen, but you kind of exist in it. You don't just hear it, if that makes sense. Like you're kind of getting taken away by everything. And it was now at 50, on the 28th or 27th or whatever the date is today, I'm in love with how this thing has been pieced together and how it sounds, 30 odd years later.
Right on. All right. Kellen, this is the first time you've heard this record? I'm assuming not.
No, yeah, I had heard this, and Disembowelment in my mind kind of appears like in my listening to. I always heard it as a death metal listen, but at the time, I was getting into early Amorphous or Mexico Cenotaph, Demigod. That's kind of where I heard this is like a. Not, I don't want to say second tier, but not one of the primary bands that you first sort of have a brush with when you're getting familiar with death metal. Disembowelment came a little bit later Now, it probably would have been too much earlier for me in terms of dating than, Logan's arrival with Inverloch. So I'm probably thinking like late 2000s is when I came across this album. I'm curious, like, because Relapse also had a little bit of their roots in Finland. So I wonder if I heard at this time period with a band like Amorphous, I think their debut records on Relapse as well. And with how much Finland contributed to sort of the sound of Funeral Doom or Death Doom, whatever you want to call that, I definitely hear similarities within Disembowelment's choices in terms of songwriting. What makes this listen, I think, unique, though, is there are sort of small contributions from different parts of extreme metal that are happening in the early 90s. That I think is probably why it was used as such important sort of source material for bands like Spectral Voice that would come later on. I hear so much of sort of the death doom fascination that's surrounded death metal. Recently, bands are looking to Disembowelment as a primary. Like the first time I heard, I think Worm's Gloom Lord, heavily pulled from this record.
Oh yeah,
and it kind of introduced, I think Relapse does a lot of the reissues, I think around this time, that 2020 time period.
Yeah.
And I'd almost imagine it's purely by word of mouth, a younger generation being exposed to this band for the first time, hearing about their influence and sort of now feeling that the sound is much more in demand than potentially it did in prior. Because like I'm similar to Lee in the sense, like when I was getting to death metal in the early 2000s, it was like Morbid Angel, Deicide, Suffocation. Like these are the names you needed to know. Disembowelment was not on that list. So it came much later for me in terms of like first familiarity, but also a kind of this band got their recognition, probably what they deserved, even though they had such a limited output. So that's kind of my history with Disembowelment and this release specifically.
Yeah, I had this early when it came out. The Relapse brand, anything with the logo on it, I had to have it. And this album didn't disappoint. Was it an instant? I got it. No, it took a minute to get there, but I think a lot of you have realized over watching us throughout the years that I'm real fussy when it comes to Doom. I like a lot of Doom, but I don't ever feel challenged by it. And it's really hard to hold my attention span. So, early on, when this finally did click with me, this appeals to a lot of my preferences when it comes to Doom metal. The Doom is very much suffocating in this when it wants to be. At times, the songs even feel like a crawl, like or they're random. Like the beats, the note strikes are coming at random points trying to find a time signature. I mean, that kind of gives it a sludgy vibe, but then they'll throw in a blast beat and then, couple all of this stuff with what I can only assume is a Dead Can Dance influence, especially on the one song, Night Side of Eden. Their use of reverb is like the fifth member in the band. It's like, it creates its own atmosphere. The clean guitar sound with tons of effects on it is absolutely awesome. I mean, I listen to this thing here and I hear four dudes creating a massive wall of sound, and they're approaching what is typically a very traditional and closed-minded style of death doom, and they're approaching it with a sense of freedom, which I think is exceptional. And maybe it's good they only put out an EP and a one full-length album, because how would have this gone on? How would it drug on? I mean, members of this band afterwards went on to the world music project called Trial of the Bow, which explored further the Dead Can Danceisms, but more experimental, which makes sense. I mean, I would have rather the band gone the way it went and then put out a bunch of really weird, a little too experimental. I think there's a fine line there, but yeah, first impression on this thing is, wow, 1993. They're clinging to a formula at the core, at the heart of their sound, there is that kind of patient, a lot of just crunching on the E or D or B or whatever they're tuned to, and letting all their atmospherics kind of carry the weight of these songs. And their drummer, the drummer is very much a lead instrument in this whole equation. But getting into the question that I came up with for today, it kind of leads off of the the sense of freedom and what 33 years later, what is Doom accomplished? But let's talk about that. Disembowelment in their short lifespan demonstrated that the heavier side of Doom could indeed push boundaries while remaining true to the core tenets of the genre. Did they maintain a proper balance? Did they go too far? Not far enough. 33 years later, compared to the release of Transcendence to the Peripheral in 1993, what do you think Doom has done right? What has it done wrong? Kellen, we'll start with you.
Sure. So there's a few questions.
There's a bunch of shit in there. Sorry.
Yeah. Let's just take the first part of this, balance. For a Doom listen, there's plenty of balance in this record. And I think there seems to be not just a question in terms of like pacing, but I think one of the sort of the downsides of a lot of sort of traditional Doom or bands that play sort of a predictable or required slow sort of style of metal is you don't get enough sort of like small incremental or ornate additions to the sound that make it entertaining. There are sort of passing moments to this record, and even at 93, like the addition of the clean guitars that sort of sit under this sort of monolithic size sort of extreme metal, right? Because at some point the heaviness would remind you of a band like Winter. Mm-hmm. It has the hallmark of a band that's playing death metal or extreme metal, but it's just the pacing is just totally slowed down. But the fact that they chose to include like not these sort of chanting vocals, mm-hmm. the guitar, the mastering for 93 and a single release, the way that they kind of at times, these clean guitars, I'll get to the individual songs, but they sound like bells at times, mm-hmm. they sound horns at times, like those slight textural variations in terms of distortion characteristics, I think make for a major difference in terms of providing some entertainment to this listen. And the few songs that I feel like you have very traditional sort of vocals that sort of reside here, but there's vocal variation. So there's like a higher pitch screaming in some of these that remind me a little bit more of a black metal style versus the traditional death metal. So what I'm getting for is balance. To answer the question, yes, this is 7 tracks. There is some variation in every single one, and they all have some individual sort of aspects to offer. So it's a very well balanced record. In terms of boundary pushing, I don't think we should hesitate for a moment to talk about 1993. This is a boundary pushing record. And I think people are still chasing it. So the fact that it has that level of currency some 33 years later, I think it's probably still an aspirational record for a lot of bands that are playing in this style. Like the only one that I think comes close to this is a band that I feel passionate about is Evoken. In terms of getting some interesting songwriting down that has variation in between tracks, balancing the doom and the death metal side of things, that have a long tenured career. That's the band that I would point to immediately.
Yeah, so, agreed. Good pick. Yep.
I think then to kind of follow up here, as for doom as a genre, I don't know. It's probably, you could argue, the first heavy metal genre, in terms of if you had to sort of classify it. I think at some level there's a degree of orthodoxy that comes along with this. And when you are given sort of bare, minimalistic aspects, you're going to embrace that as a genre. And too often they end up sounding recycled. Rarely do they sort of step through and have a unique sound. And I mean, like, this is one that's pushing boundaries. there's plenty of great orthodox doom bands, sure. Like I've talked about my affection towards Lord Victor, which I think is a very traditional doom band.
Yep.
But I think, to your point, like, this is at some level a unique offering within doom as a genre. And there's going to be a lot of bands that stick to sort of the bare bones side of things, and you are limited. Either you're going to embrace that as a fan of the genre, and probably you have limited patience. There's probably a whole lot of bands who got this wrong in their experimentation. So the fact that in this case Disembowelment's got so much right is probably why it still is the highest standard overall for the genre.
All right, Lee.
God, I'm going to feel like a shithead when I answer this one, because not being a massive Doom fan, I mean, look, if you're saying pushing boundaries, I mean, from Sabbath, yeah, but I mean, I don't even think these guys knew how to spell boundaries. Like, it's nuts. There's, I mean, the only band that I could think of kind of in the time frame that I would, and I mean, I called them Doom. I'm kind of hoping that, unlike my Megadeth comment, this doesn't fall on the wrong side of the line. But
Disembowelment was not from the Bay Area. I'm just going to lay that out right now.
No, they're a little bit closer to home. But the only other band that I could say was doing something and they didn't sound anything like this was Confessor. Right? Remember how out of the fucking bag that thing sounded? Like,
yeah.
That was a singer who thought he was in. They must have played him some other song, and then they just wrote music under, something else. And so it was. But that again is something where. But boundaries, like, I don't think you can really. I mean, look, you can push and push and push, and then you got like the audience will say, "Well, no, it's no longer Doom." But ultimately, if you keep it slow enough, you keep 1 foot at least in that camp. And that's always been my argument with Doom, is that it stays there and the songs are always long. And by the second chorus or first chorus, actually, I'm thinking, oh fuck, I didn't pay that medical bill. And I'm done. Like, I'm already out of the thing. But I've recently picked up Evoken, and I've kind of started to appreciate this again. But I mean, Evoken, not to offend, but that's almost like Poison's Open Up and Say Ah to this. I mean, this is that they are at least song structures. I don't think this had boundaries or structure. And so. Yeah, boundaries were pushed. I think it was good. I think you can only push them. Just keep going. Just keep on pushing away. I don't think they went far enough. I think they should just. I mean, for 93, yeah, that was probably right out of the park. But I mean, looking at the rest of the question, thank God I wrote it down.
Yeah.
So, but I mean, they had blast beats in there too. So I mean, then they stepped into that Order Death. I kind of look at Doom, the old-fashioned stuff, which I like. It wasn't always death vocals. It was Aussie. It was, to a lesser extent, Confessor. There was, Trouble. There was vocals. When the death element stepped into it, to me and to all my friends back in high school, it was death metal. So I mean, looking at it in 2026. I can see, obviously, just the vocals changing. You do have that pulsating, grind that Doom has, and whatever we call it now, death, Doom, death. But I think this is a genre like raw black metal where it can become very stale very quick, because it does have a very limited type of blueprint, and any deviation from that, we get things like death doom death, you know what I mean? So we start breaking out into all these other things. But look, I don't think I like I said, I'm not a big Doom fan, though I kind of I'm getting back into it. I'm trying my hardest not to just go back to Macabre Omen, because it's just too I don't know, just grindingly slow for me. But this thing here at least gave enough variation, enough change, enough something to
Plus,
keep
there's an
me-
emotional component to it as well.
There is, yeah, and I mean this. You can get that with this too. I mean, I was fully immersed in the vocal, both the clean and the death. I thought they were both as strong as each other.
Oh yeah.
And that's rare. Normally, when you get that clean singing, you're like, pause, stop, next song. But this was one of those ones where the clean singing rivaled, the atmosphere that the death growl did. So I mean, I don't even know if I answered the question, Marty, but I think that fucking A, 93 pushed those boundaries all the way. I haven't heard a doom band in my very limited view that has come close to what I heard over the last week.
Right on. All right, Logan. Your thoughts on my rambling question? Sorry.
The first part of the question, does this balance doom enough, or do they go too far? I mean, for me, approaching this, like, as I already mentioned, in like the 2010s, like this was kind of already a stone cold classic. Relapse, not Relapse. Decibel had already featured, I think, Transcendence in their Hall of Fame. As I said, Inverloch were coming out as being like a continuation of this classic sound that Relapse was pushing. And then, years later, all these bands start really trying to follow the sound of this album. And some come close, like I like Spectral Voice a lot. Some are, perfect copies, like that Worm album we've talked about. But none quite occupy the same space that this one does. And I think just because of all that coming into this, the legacy of this album felt resolute and cemented in the lore of metal, as like this was a unique, take on doom. And I don't know if it was like more related or tagged as more death metal earlier on, but I was always introduced to this album as here's a doom album. This is like your, doom with all the bells and whistles we can put on it at once, and make it as avant-garde as possible while still being doom. And truthfully, I do think that is the beating heart of Transcendence, is like this slow, almost funeral doom like dirge. The drums do it, the guitars do it, even all of the vocals for the most part, lay on either like the very low gutturals or like these more angelic, clean vocals that actually Thurgothn did on this album. So I think at the core it is, it does have that doom heart to it, but what makes it fresh and perfectly balanced is there's this sense of tension that is always there, because you never know when the hell, like, it's coming. They're going to drop this, like, one drum beat and then this guitar riff that comes straight out of like Suffocation just, attacks you. But it's hard to place when it is. And it really keeps the tension and the excitement up, and I think the fact that they do that while still being a doom at their core, it's impressive and indeed boundary pushing. I mean, a phrase we'll keep using throughout tonight. What has doom done right? What have they done wrong? Yeah, I mean, doom is kind of a style defined by its parameters more so than what it can do. And I think doom, especially in the later half of the 90s, it ended up being like a commodifier or like an accent to what other people could do with different styles. Like you would get death doom, which is like, let's just make death metal, but slow it down. Or you could do funeral doom, which is like pushing the traditional doom elements to an extreme degree of slowness. Or, doom would just become a bunch of different things. And I think like the main tenet of doom from like the early 90s, I don't think it fully carried through to the 2000s, I'm sure in like some bands and stuff, but in like bigger scenes, I don't really think doom was one of the main metal flag wavers going into the new millennia. I will say I think doom just as a style overall is a lot healthier these days. In the 2010s, it feels like everyone is now kind of getting back on the doom train. We've got bands like Crypt Sermon and Chemist and a whole bunch in that ilk that are like flying the more traditional doom Doom flag, and I think that kind of is what Doom is. I mean, that's what Doom is meant to be, is more of like that style. Is there this sense of freedom and just like anything goes? No, in none of this. And like that's a disembowelment thing. You can probably find like one-offs, but for Doom as a whole, I don't think that was ever really a main tenet of the genre. Like if I could think of any one word to describe Doom, it is tradition, and it's not this avant-garde like spaghetti at the wall kind of thing that Disembowelment do on this album. So I think that's part of the reason why this album's legacy is as cemented as it is, because it's the one. And then there are now like the styles, like the bands that are trying to ape it, but we all know what they're doing. We all know who they're reaching for, and because it's been done, it can't be done in that exact same way again. So I think Doom is back on the right track, because it's just trying to be more like Black Sabbath and Candlemass and the traditional stuff. And, that's why I think it's in a better place now than it's been in a decade or so. But are we seeing more albums like Transcendence in the Peripheral that, into the Peripheral, that are doing that exact like boundary pushing thing? No. And I don't know if you will.
I think Doom, I'm kind of with Lee on this idea of the fact that I know enough about Doom to be dangerous, I guess. I have a conversation, but I'm not a connoisseur of it, because obviously there's some parameters that I just get bored with really easily. And I just kind of see the genre of Doom to be either the Black Sabbath camp or the My Dying Bride camp. And a lot of, you look at bands like Trouble, Black Sabbath camp. Candlemass, Black Sabbath camp. My Dying Bride, of course, spun a million Death Doom bands that, even my own band is influenced by that as well. Spectral Voice, I remember picking up the first couple things that they put out, the demo and the first full length, and I'm hearing these Disembowelment riffs on here, and it made me angry. I'm just like, this seems like such a special body of work to pick from. It's almost too easy. The roadmap's already been laid out. Take that and do something different. No, they did a linear, we're just going to copy these riffs kind of thing. Worm, I'm still waiting for, I guess the thing that bothers me about Worm is I'm still waiting to see what the band Worm sounds like. The Disembowelment emulation was weak, and now they're Dimmu Borgir. It's like, I guess that's what gets really frustrating. And that happens when you're, the creative stew that is the music scene is so oversaturated. What do they say? There's 200,000 new songs uploaded to Spotify a day. Good grief, man. But, is it Doom's fault? I don't it is what it is. And, tradition is definitely very important in the Doom world. And I think it is in heavy metal as well. But, getting into Disembowelment, what did they do right here? Again, there's a sense of freedom here. They're maybe borrowing from that Dead Can Dance, which is their corner of the world, as well. There's that influence there, and they do it with such ease. It doesn't, the one thing I'll take away from this album is none of these ideas that they're pulling from sound forced. It just sounds like like they naturally assimilated what they've been listening to outside of metal, and it just kind of came through in this way. And when you listen to the core elements of what they're doing, it's super simple. It's minimalist music. It's that reverb that ties all the elements together, and you got that clean guitar line, you got those clean chanting vocals, you got that lady singing on the one song, which we'll get into later. I love that piece. I think that the album needed that. I wish it would have went longer and grew into a more fully realized song. But, so they could have taken that. I'm with Lee. They could have taken that farther. They were really touching on some greatness with these ideas. And the freedom of it was very refreshing, and it's still to this day refreshing. This is a 33-year-old album, and I put it on and I'm still kind of enamored by it. how did these kids get to this? And it's interesting too, looking into the members of this band going forward. They're, especially with, Australia being such an insulated music scene, you'd think there'd be a lot of dudes, and, you look at the bands that people in Sweden are in, they're in 15 bands. We got a good drummer. A drummer's in every band, from grind to AC/DC tribute bands. But that's not the case. There's Trial of the Bow, there's Inverloch, and there's like one band here or there amongst them that didn't do anything. It's like they had this one thing that they did, threw it out into the world, disbanded, and they never really, these guys didn't go on to join Blood Duster or D666, or they just kind of had this thing that they did, and that was it. And it's very interesting. It's very strange, but so yeah, let's talk about the musicality and composition of Transcendence into the Peripheral. Lee, why don't you give it a start?
Oh boy, I think I said some of my stuff. Composition or structure, I don't think, again, structure to me is like it's got a chorus. And if any one of you guys can tell me what the chorus is in the first song, then I'll agree that this thing had structure. Because it doesn't have it. Like I said, there's riffs in here that come once, and I'd never hear them again. And if they do come back, they're coming back under a different, they got new clothes on. They've got like a clean guitar, or it's got like a clean vocal or something there. So to my ears, I just never heard anything repeat itself. I mean, unless I'm out of the loop on what structure is. Structure to me is the Beatles. Structure to me is, Kiss. It's every rock band, every heavy metal band.
Verse, chorus, bridge, verse, chorus.
Yeah,
chorus.
Fade out. So this is something where, the only thing I think that had structure in it was that you had a bunch of real heavy songs, and then you have that 1-2 minute just breath of fresh air, and then straight back into it again. You know what I mean? So I guess you could say that's some type of structure, but there was growls, there was clean singing. They blended into each other gorgeously. And the guy he's not singing poorly either. Like normally when you have a death metal singer, he's a death metal singer who attempts clean vocals. This seems to have a very nice, the guy's hitting notes, whatever those notes are. It doesn't sound out of place. It's rhythmic. That's what the big thing I took away. I know, Marty, you said it's a drummer's album. I would agree to the point where I would almost say that the guitar player might have been a drummer at some point, because it's all the riffs are like jung, jung,
very
jung.
percussive.
Mm-hmm. It is. It's percussive, but I mean the drums are just doing that percussive thing. I can see how a drummer would like this, but you're not getting, Terry Bozzio on this thing. It's very, laid back. It has to be. And yet it's also very eccentric in the change ups. And I wrote this down. I thought this was a very clever line, everyone. So just amuse me with my intellect. I said it's math rock where all the answers are always 4/4. And I'm like, God, that sounds stupid now. But anyway, but it's true. It's like, I know there's stuff going on, but it's like it's still just, it's the same boom, boom. And but again, it's like there's just so many elements to it, and it's a massive wall of sound. I don't want to get too much. I don't want to get in production at all. Otherwise, I blow my load on that one. But I mean, it doesn't seem to be controlled yet. I mean, again, I would love to know how they wrote this. Like, how do you write a 14-minute song and never repeat the same thing?
I got this riff, guys. Jung.
Yeah.
Jung. Dude, that's sick. No.
Let me put a sick drum beat over that. And then it's like, all right, stop. I'll come back with another riff. And then they do 8 bars of that, so that blows my mind that you could remember that many change ups and that many different paces, changes in speed. And that blows my mind. I think that's what gets me, is that you'll You could probably listen to this album, and you said there was a female singer. I'm yet to hear the female singer, so I'm so far listening to something else. I'm like, there's a female singer on this thing? Like, what track was that? So,
Nice Side of Eden, track 4. It's all ladies singing with 2 clean guitar lines and a ton of reverb.
I better change my favorite track. But, but that's the thing. There's so much happening. You'll listen to this album again in, a week, 2 weeks, and you'll hear something different and that's the best thing that you can say, I think, about an album is like every time you hear it, it's changing. So structure, you can, put that out the door. Composition, genius. How it was done, some mad scientist in a coat cooking it all up and piecing it all together. I mean, that's the only thing I can explain to how this was put out and made sound so grand. And I'm just waffling, but you know what I mean. There's just so much happening. Structure though, none of that. They decided to forget that part.
All right, Kellen.
Okay, well, I'll take a little bit more of a swing at this in terms of the structure side of it.
Thanks, Kellen.
I do also, just before I get into like individual songs, I think the pacing, like how they decided to lay out the tracks, I think also that was incredibly well done. The first one is sort of like an introduction here. So if I were just going by the track names, what I mean by that is the Tree of Life and Death. I think that's sort of like a introduction to the core elements of what makes up their sound. We get into the Prophetic Throne of Ivory. That's a little bit more on the sort of gothic side. Excoriate here, it's a shorter track, but the note that I put here is there's the sustain. The clean guitar in here sounds decidedly different than it does on some of the other tracks. Like for me, that clean guitar on Prophetic Throne is more of like a bell tone. Excoriate, to me, there's this long extended distortion that sounded much more like a note you would hear from a horn section. And anyway, it's a shorter track. Then you move into the track you talked about with the Dead Can Dance influence, Nice Side of Eden. I mean, we don't get more gothic and then on this moment here, kind of this weird dark wave serves as kind of an interlude.
Yeah.
Every time I listened to this, though, it always felt like it was a marriage to the track that follows. Because we get into the Barrel of Ornans is the monolith that sits in the middle of this album.
Mm-hmm.
I think it tests your patience at a time period where if this had been the closing track, I probably would have been more challenging to sit through, because the first 7 minutes of this are a test of patience. You made the comment, Marty, that it almost felt a bit more like sludge. I guess there is something here that feels, because of its extremity, removed from all the sort of like convention that I associate with traditional heavy metal and doom. There's something about this that feels darker, bleaker, more barren, like the emotional challenge through these moments. 7 minutes into this, though, they give you a little bit of a payoff, and the sort of the death metal arrives. And you realize there's 7 more minutes here on this track. But the closing, I'll just use this as an example for how they play with structural elements within a song, is you get probably the quietest sort of emotional levity and the sort of interlude that precedes it, right? It very much feels like a breath of air before you sort of are plummeted or submerged beneath sort of the waves of this next track, which is the most challenging, I think, emotionally. So that sort of juxtaposition, I think, in terms of track layout, was intelligent and was deliberate and serves this record really well. But in terms of structure, if you look at the back, I would 100% agree with Lee in terms of like, how much do we have to play with here? The first 7 minutes are pretty kind of bare bones, right? It's junk, extreme, just like vocals, and it's that for 7 minutes. but they give you some payoff. So when you actually get a death metal riff and some more upbeat drumming, it's like you get a taste of it, right? They sort of they wet the palate for death metal to come, and they don't reward the listener in the closing 7 minutes with pure death metal. It retreats back to some of the sort of songwriting structural elements that happen in the first 7 minutes. But the fact that they sort of reward you, pull it away, and then reward you again, I think was a good call in terms of how to manage a 14-minute song. Because at that 7-minute mark, they sort of introduce something that I'm looking for, right? That I know the song isn't just going to be a predictable slog for 14 minutes, which I think is, to your point, Marty, in the question, one of the greatest frustrations with this is they will just lock into a dirge for 14, 20 plus minutes. And you're just supposed to accept that. Mm-hmm. The fact that they push you emotionally for 7 minutes and then toy with how they reward you on the closing 7, I think is a constructed song.
Yeah.
Just I'll use that as an example there. We follow that with, I think, so the spirit of the tall hills, here's another transition moment. So we get from Ornans, as dark and as bleak as that moment is emotionally, there's like some chimes or synth.
I have it in my notes. It's like it calls upon the childhood familiarity of hearing the wind chimes out the window in the summertime. It
just
fucked me up with my head.
The fucking rescue,
I
right?
know.
Like it is such an emotional change there, and I think in the same way that you sort of were given a moment of levity or a little bit of like calm in the lead up to Ornans, in terms of what Eden had to offer, we are sort of rescued again. And that's the span of 20 some minutes that happens there. I just think it's so well built into a record in terms of how to explore these sort of what typically ends up being challenging for a Doom listen. They just give you enough, right, to where it's not leaving genre convention, but they know how to play with the formula and introduce new sort of instruments or textures or sort of soundscape kind of things that make this entertaining. So the spirit of the tall hills very much reminds me, this is in my mind, the return to kind of the stuff they got with Prophetic Throne of Ivory. Those are sort of sister songs for me on the record. And we kind of get in the closer, Carillion, Transience of My Imagined Shores. There we go. I also want to, I'll bring this in terms of the songwriting and the exploring things here. That song title dips into some sort of like psychedelic elements, I think, in terms of this listen, meaning if it had just been a traditional death metal listen or a death doom listen, or they weren't about pushing boundaries, they would not write a song title like that, nor challenge the listener in the music that would follow. That is a clear sign for me that I wouldn't want to associate this with pure psychedelia, but I do think I was hearing this. The reason this is in my mind is I was listening to the podcast that Wagner and Hunter again do together. Remind me of the name, it escapes me at the moment.
Radical Research.
Yeah, Radical Research. And they were talking about sort of psychedelic music and this process of synesthesia, like how we can move from one kind of cognitive, so you're thinking about a particular sort of colors, for example, and you move to thinking about potentially what do you want to call it, like a textural sensory, or you move from different kind of sensory perception, sight, sound, touch, like those things happen with synesthesia, and psychedelic music is meant to explore that. And Lee made a comment at the beginning of this of how you sort of inhabit this or you live through this, right? I think by the time you get to this closer, I don't know if it's just because of the taxing sort of doom experience that I've just gone through, but there's a certain kind of I want to say sort of release that I feel in this final track. Okay, so anyway,
No, it's in my note. No. Go ahead, because there's like a feeling, even though it's a very melancholic song, and still very much in line with the rest of the album. There's a little light of hope that cracks through the dungeon, like you're actually crawling out of the dungeon. There's a synth line that's different than anything else on the album. The mood of the song changes in the last 2 minutes. That it kind of gives you a release from the suffocating dirge of what was sitting on top of it. It's a very interesting way to, because I'm thinking, why did they end with even a slower song? But you get to that synth line and it changes. It completely changed. It feels like some of the weight's lifted off your shoulders a bit. And I'm like, they're giving you a little bit of light at the end of the tunnel here. But
I believe there's a double bass played on that final track as well.
It picks up the pace to a bit more energetic time signature. So yeah.
So I just think there's that, to your point, like the way they close this, in terms of not just like the instrumentation, but like on an emotional level. I think those are things that are maybe how they would focus in terms of compositional elements to make this listen, in terms of pulling from different sort of subgenres, have a lot of the same highlights or some of the better sort of qualities that you would find outside of a doom metal or a metal listen. So I think compositionally, I guess I would talk, instead of less specific songs here, the overarching sort of like arc of this record has like a very, in my mind, deliberate choices they made in terms of composition and structure.
All right, Logan.
Man, following Kellen sometimes, it's
it's pretty cool.
Yeah. What he said.
Yeah, ditto.
No, to briefly touch on the influences I was kind of talking about in the beginning, saying, it's their goth and suffocation with Dead Can Dance sprinkled over top. Like, that certainly does not do this album justice, because I think these influences are simultaneously melded together seamlessly, but then also it feels like they're trapped together, like where they don't want to be, and that's part of the building of tension. Like, sometimes it's like, Thurgothan, Suffocation, and Dead Can Dance played all simultaneously over top of each other, where you've got like these clean guitar lines. The vocals are doing like the funeral, doom death growl, and then you can also hear like the reliable chung, but then the drums are just like blast beats, just intense blast beats, and they do that throughout the album, and then they on a dime switch and change it to either more of a straight doom or more of like a death metal groove, and it's killer that they're able to successfully pull all that off together. And then to kind of touch on what Kellen's main point is about, like the ebb and flow and like the tearing and the way this album kind of delivers, I 100% agree. It is indeed a ditto situation, but I think the individual tracks do that at times as well. Like, just using the Tree of Life and Death as like an example, there's that like clean guitar, like it's like raining, descending clean guitar. It's only like 10 to 20 second long section, and then they take it away from you, and you're like, man, that was the coolest part of the song. It's like 10 seconds, is like a minute in, and then you're going through this like maze of stop start, like tension building exercises. Then they bring it back for the final like crescendo of the track, except they're also doing blast beats over it. And I feel like they use that trick over a couple different songs, where they'll show you this like shiny object, and then, as you were saying, Kelly, they take it away, and then you're just like, you're trapped in this hellish maze for the duration of the 10 minutes until they bring it back right towards the very end. Or even one of my favorite tracks is the Your Prophetic Throne of Ivory, where it's like they're showing you this melody, but it feels like a bastardized version of what it should be. Like, it's like a free jazz, but it's kind of dissonant and awkward and clunky. And then they slowly piece it together throughout the song, But then the whole time they're doing all this, the heart of the music itself, to me, is that like funeral doom chug, and it just keeps going from song to song, and I think that is the heart of the album. But for me, the true heart is the drummer. I'm just following what he's doing, and I would agree with Marty where it's a drummer's album. It absolutely is just impressive, and I think that he is, he leaves you like a breadcrumb trail on like that long track, A Burial at Ornans. Like, it is 7 minutes long, and it's a trial of patience, but the drummer, he's like adding in certain little things every single time he goes around, and I think he's just sprinkling in this build that they're doing as they keep going, and it helps make like these very ambitious boundary pushing songs work, that he's able to be so intricate with his drum performance and just so lively. And sometimes you're like, man, do you really need to be doing blast beats right now? There's a beautiful like clean guitar melody. Why are we like doing this? But
always be blasting, Logan.
Always be blasting. And then that's when you
ABB,
realize
ABB,
that's the best. And to highlight that, I actually like how he does his blasts. It makes me think of Paul from Cannibal Corpse, where it's just like it's the snare,
it's hammer blast.
Hammer blast.
Yep. That's what it is.
Thank you. Yeah, all at the same time, and it's rewarding to hear him like just pull that off in the way that he does. And yeah, the drummer is absolutely my favorite part of this album for me. But the vocals though are also a highlight. Just the wide variety of like from traditional like funeral doom and death doom kind of vocals to everything in between. And for me, it's like almost these angelic, like clean singing vocals that really just build the emotional tension on certain tracks and really help it have an emotional weight and impact to it. So yeah, there's just so much to unpack with this album for sure. Like it's hard not to just keep going on all the different like corridors, and it's like an album where you have dimension. You're going into a house, and every time it feels like the first time, and you discover a new room every single time. It's a rewarding listen in that way, and then sometimes you take a step back and you actually see the full picture, like what Kellen kind of perfectly described during his section. So yeah, I am enamored by the composition and the structure of this album. Yeah,
the album is interesting. It is easy to think that it does present as a concept record. You look at the track listing. You've got the beginning, the middle, and the end. There's 3 songs that are over 10 minutes long. So there's like these 3 support columns holding up everything. And you would think they would put the best material into those 3 behemoth tracks, but they don't. Even the shorter songs are from 4 to 7 minutes. There's a lot going on in here as well, but conceptually this album, it's been really hard to sit and piece apart. It almost feels criminal to do that, because this is one of those records I'll put on just for the world building component to it. Just sit and really process it. It feels like you're cheapening it a bit, but I will agree with Lee on the fact that, yes, there is no verse, chorus, bridge, verse, chorus to this. There are movements that are repeated in a song, like the first track, The Tree of Life and Death. There's the blast beat at the beginning with that riff, and then the blast, they bookend the song with it. They bring it back. So there are moments that they bring in, but there are indeed times on this record where it feels like the structures are chaotic. It feels like there's not much going on for a long time, but when the changes start to happen, they seemingly come out of nowhere. And you're like, you're kind of like, oh, it kind of snaps you out of the trance a little bit, which I kind of appreciate the fact, because the minimalism of this record could have got a little out of hand. I would have started to lose my interest. But, they dangle the shiny thing in front. Oh, here's a blast beat, or just like a 4-note clean guitar line with a ripping blast beat over the top of it. Who does that? I mean, there's a grindcore influence. I was looking at the pictures of the guys now. The drummer was wearing a Phobia t-shirt. I'm like, well, you could tell he was into grind. And there are moments that do dip into that on here, which I think is awesome. How they can go from this funeral dirge to, moments of grindcore, and they do so kind of at the drop of a hat when they feel that it's time to wake the listener up a bit. Again, this is where the freedom comes in. And, listen to everybody talk about this record, and I want to as well. You really want to think that this is all orchestrated this way. They wanted it this way, but then I get to thinking maybe they just got lucky. Maybe they just wrote these songs and threw it together. Oh, put some reverb on it. I don't want to cheapen it by thinking that, but there's like the sneaking suspicion in the back of my head that this was just a happy accident. But then you listen to the other tracks that are on this compilation that Relapse put out with a more raw production. And these guys, they had their chops. They were playing this way specifically. There was a studio budget here. And I guess I can make mention that this was recorded in during the winter and spring of 1992 at Toy Box Studios in Northcote, Melbourne, produced by Disembowelment. So, I don't know. It's just songwriting composition is where we're at here. I'm getting off track. I am really impressed by the chances they take. I love everything. It didn't really leave me wanting more other than the gothic track with the lady singing, Nighttime of Eden. But hearing Kellen size it up, I'm like, yeah, it does complement the track after it perfectly. It's a perfect setup for that. So, again, is this a happy accident or was this the intention? I don't know. Is this a studio thing? Oh, we got this lady. She's a good singer. My girlfriend can sing really well. Bring her in and let's do this thing. But everything is paced in the right, perfect way. The way the album ends, like we mentioned on that track with the keyboard line towards the end, the last 2 minutes are just kind of sublime. How they single-handedly with a simplistic keyboard line changed the whole feel of the album. Giving the listener an out, giving the listener, you've been dragging your wounded body through this forgotten dungeon and you're finally going to make it out. For the composition, holy shit, monstrous. It's great. Songwriting and composition. Again, I will reiterate what Lee said. If, when you're starting off playing guitar, you're just kind of learning some stuff and, there's riffs on here that aren't really riffs. It's just sound. They're making sound with their guitars. You just, the rhythmic crunch of the A chord every, measure, a couple times every measure. It's like to sit in your room and just go jung, jung, jung. Guys, I got this idea for a song. There had to be a lot of forethought and working at, they probably came up with a lot of the melody lines first and then just put a more simplistic, minimal foundation underneath it. It would have been interesting to sit in on the writing sessions and see how these songs came about. But to get such simple lines and to create such a vast world of sound, with sound, I love that shit. Summoning does it well. The bands that do it in the world, I just completely want more of that. I want to devour that because it makes them special, because a lot of bands are just copycats, man. President Company, I'm part of that. I'm part of the problem. We're part of the problem. But so when someone actually can take the core tenets of a couple different genres and make something really special with it, man, that's just to be cherished. And I hope we can do that a little bit with what we're doing tonight. So let's talk about the production. Logan.
Similar to like the just the composition of this thing, where it's like got these polar opposites that are like kind of tearing each other apart. I feel like the production is managing to do something similar. Like this is an extremely heavy and dark, cavernous underground record. Like it feels like it was recorded in a cave, and abandon all hope, ye who enter. Like there's no light coming in any of these cracks, but then all of a sudden there is, and there's like these bright and effervescent guitar lines that just sneak in, and like the vocals that are like bright and beautiful at times as well. And it's impressive that they're just perfectly balanced and just make it work. And I think a lot of it has to do with the way that everything is kind of amped up, and how much reverb they use in for the guitars and the vocals and even the drums specifically. Like there's just so much wall of sound from the more death doom guitars and the guttural vocals and even the drum performance that, that's what's creating this dark and cavernous feeling. But then as soon as they like link up like the clean vocals or like the clean jangly guitars that are sounding like other instruments and stuff, it's just this beacon of brightness and this distortion and dark mix. And it's really cool to see them combine something truly horrific with something oddly beautiful. It feels disconcerting, honestly, just how they actually add all of it together and make it work. And once again, it's like
your soundproofing is totally getting
I know, dude. That's
eviscerated.
I remember why I moved it in here, because these cats are shredding it. I got soundproofing to make this room louder eventually, if it'll get that far.
That cat's like, fuck your soundproof.
Yeah, exactly.
This looks nice. I think I'll ruin it.
Yeah. New litter box. Yeah. But man, I think once again my favorite part of the production is just where the placement of the drums is. It's just like right at the center, orchestrating everything, providing the core of the heaviness, and just really pushing the album along. Like that's where you get like the pop and the forward momentum is from the drum performance and the way the drums are mixed in here. Just another example of like this duality of the production is, as Kellen's mentioned, that the instrumental, or not the instrumental, but the track with the lady singing, Night Side of Eden, we go out of Excoriate, which is like the most death metal and down-tuned track of the album, into that one, and it's just a flip of the switch, and it's beautiful, clean, pristine, and very Dead Can Dance. So just the fact that they can tether both of these, at odd forces together, is a testament. And I think this production is perfect. And I'm not surprised. So there's an actual budget, and this is not like a let's do it in our basement and send it to a record label. They had funds, and there was time and effort focused on the production. And I can hear it. It makes sense. It's perfectly produced. I really have no complaints.
Lee.
I love watching Logan talk, actually, because I've been watching his cats just like fuck around with his shit over there, which is making me smile.
That's why I'm so entertaining, because it's not me you're watching.
And he's got this voice that kind of lulls me into this thing, and then I hear the bass player go, the drummer's playing too much. I'm like, yeah, I've heard that. Then he just became a bass player. I've had you on my show, Logan. That's a horrible thing to say to a drummer.
Did I say that?
Yeah, of course you did. But getting to the production, so when Marty's talking, it's funny because he said, maybe this was just a happy accident. And then I'm thinking, that's right, they're Australian. They're sitting, and Melbourne's like, it's in winter. It's 55 degrees, and one of them goes, oh, we better put on a long sleeve. It's pretty cold outside. And they go down to the studio, there's a ton of beer, and then someone goes, hey, wouldn't it be funny if you just played a blast beat over that? And then suddenly, 30 years later, we're going, this is a genius album. Well, maybe they were just drunk. Who knows? But that's what I'm thinking. But so I wanted to have a look at, it was recorded at a place called Toy Box, and I was like, I've kind of heard of that. I remember that. And that was because Bloodduster recorded there, and Mortification did their one good album there. And so I figured, let's go and have a look and see, because Australia's not a big place, and suddenly you'll start seeing bands of people in bands that kind of show up in other places, and I'm like, maybe I might know one and I might be able to share a story. Turns out I don't, but it's funny because the sounds that Australia was getting on extreme metal that I was hearing back then, and the Australian people in the audience can probably attest to this, we weren't great at it. Like, we didn't do great productions. We weren't doing a Morris sound type of thing. We were kind of still learning it. And the way you can tell on this is the drums are actually distorted, right? So if you listen to the bass drum is distorting.
It's triggered too.
No, it's not. It's
You don't
not
think
triggered.
so?
No, that's definitely. So I looked into that too. I was like, maybe 92 would have been pretty. I mean, I don't know when triggers started, but as all my research brought me to was like it was recorded onto analog tape, and everything was as it came out of the microphone. So that big wall of sound was just like guitar tracks on top of guitar tracks, just like layered, and you got that big cavernous, for 93 wall of sound which they got. But I keep wanting that drum to have that thud, and it doesn't. It's got a sizzle, and I'm like, there you go, that's the Australian sound. And or maybe that could have been that the guys themselves produced it, and they just messed up the drums, but the drums don't have the body in it. And then it's like, I want them to sound like Evocan drums, but I don't, because then that takes away, I feel that kind of takes away some of the character of it. And so I was kind of focusing a little bit on the drums, and I'm like, the drums, if you really put the headphones on, are separated. They don't sound like the compression it was very light maybe, but it doesn't sound like it's glued right. And I think that's part of the charm too, where there feels like there's a lot of space between the instruments, which has to lend itself to the how big this thing sounds, right? I mean, it might sound a bit disjointed on some things, like the blast beats to me sound a little bit disjointed.
He's having a couple of songs. It feels like he's about to fall off of the.
Especially, and Kel brought this up, was that first song. That's jarring, considering it takes you, once you get past that first song, to me, it's just, that's where the gold is. That's where you start to enter this world, which, again, I'm chuckling at, because it could have just been a bunch of drunk dudes in a studio just playing riffs and piecing them all, into one long song, and by the time they're like, oh fuck, this song's 14 minutes. What the fuck? This was supposed to be 2 songs. So, I mean, it could have been a stroke of genius, or yes, it could have just been dumb, stupid luck. And I don't know which way to fall on it. But
neither. I'm going to fall on genius, but yeah.
Yeah, the only bit of history I guess I can offer is that we also produced Blood Duster.
Which their records typically sound awesome. They great. Do. Yeah.
But they also sung about, like, he's got girly grits underneath his drawers. Like, we did stupid shit. And I just keep thinking they all had to be friends. Melbourne and Sydney might as well have been, the United States and China. That's how far away we were. I mean, it's 10-hour drive or so. I don't know what it is now. But we didn't know any bands ultimately from Melbourne. Like, this band could have come out and we might not have found about like two years down the track. But yeah, I'm looking at my notes going, maybe this was just stupidity and just drunk guys. But if you just looked at this and you just heard this today, it sounds like 1993. There is some little flaws in there that kind of give it the character, which I think if you made that a better sounding drum kit, you may not have gotten the product that we're listening to today. So, can 20-year-olds produce a classic? Yes. Is it likely? No. But we could have stumbled onto something, and as an Australian, I'll take that as pat on the back.
Hell yeah. All right, Kellen, production.
Yeah, I mean, the first thing that jumped out to me, it's interesting to hear that, Lee, because I would have immediately assumed that these were triggered drums, or at least
the kick sound triggered to me, but I don't know.
Just to my ears, that's like the one thing about this mix that kind of bothers me. It's not necessarily the placement in the mix, like how forward they are in the mix. It's just to your point about like how they're supposed to sound. It feels a bit off to me, like that was played in the studio somehow. So that's the one part about this record that I feel is a little bit like leaves me wanting, because I do think like it sounds like an early 90s death metal guitar tone. I like how forward or how audible the vocals are in the mix. I do think on some of the tracks, like, even though it's sort of specifically here, I'm referring to the sort of higher register screams you get on Prophetic Throne of Ivory or Spirit of Tall Hills. You can make out to some degree that the lyrical content. And I think a part of that is just, it does seem like they are a little bit more forward, whereas like the guitar stuff seems to be a bit deeper in the mix. And the fact that so much of that guitar content and like even bass guitar content feels a bit more mid-rangey to me is like a hallmark of the time period. I don't think it sounds like it's weighted towards the bottom end, or they're tuning down to such an extent like you would hear with a lot of sort of more produced death metal bands nowadays. So I just, man, like, and all the other like secondary stuff, all the, you know, the chimes, the clean guitar lines, like those are highlighted in enough to where I think they make sense and they contribute to the record. Synth, double bass, like all that kind of stuff. The drums always leave me wanting on this. It's a classic. I know I feel the same way as Blessed Are the Sick. I hate the drum sound on that record. It's a classic landmark record, but they toyed with the drum sound in the studio a little bit. And it's the one aspect where I always listen to it.
It's a weird sounding record. I love it. I got used to it, but yeah, it's weird.
Right. Like this, the part of this listen, for Disembowelment is like, it is kind of, sure, there are aspects that are weird, but it kind of works in its favor, right? Like this is kind of where it's strange, makes it unique and special. I just wish they had a little bit of a different drum sound on this. That's the one major criticism I have every time I listen to this record.
I think the drums are noticeably, basically this thing is mixed like if you were go to a club, the sound guy always mixes the drums loud and the vocals loud. And that's kind of where this one sits. But I also think that that would have been a conscious decision, because the drummer is doing a lot to, I mean, it takes a drummer a considerable amount of restraint to, you can tell he's trying to make some of these riffs a little bit more exciting, because he knows in the back of his head that there's just a lot of boring crunching going on here. But in his processing of, he does keep it super sparse when it needs it. But when he, you know, like those 4-note, heavily affected clean guitar lines where he's just blasting over it, it's just a clean guitar and the blast beat. The bass rarely makes an appearance. When it is, it's way buried, super buried. And there are points on this record where it sounds like you are in one end of an old dungeon and you can hear the music wafting down the corridor, type of the way the guitars are produced. I like the fact, you know, I'm a product of the early 90s when it comes to this stuff. So it sounds right to me. The guitars sound right. And to Lee's, you know, to second what he's saying here, you know, they layered these guitars to get more of a cavernous sound. I like the fact that it's not a modern, super tight and crisp guitar sound. There's a little bit of room for expansion here. It's a little bit of a sloppiness in the sound. It adds to the cavernous motif that they're going for, but this production works for me. And someone mentioned early on it's, you know, a cross of death metal and 4AD bands. Yeah. Those clean guitar lines are Cocteau Twins or Dead Can Dance. And God, I love how they highlighted those moments on the album with more reverb. And it just stands out and makes the song so much more special. And the way the production is geared, it cuts through better. You know, it almost makes those crunchy, boring riffs that are just kind of filling in the foundation. It makes those parts insignificant. They're there for substance. They're not really there for, you know, a completely discernible riff. It's there to fill in the bottom end. I don't know. I think the production, happy accident or not, it turned out really well. The drums being loud in the mix, it's an interesting choice. It makes it a lead instrument, which, you know, drums are the timekeeper. They're not typically a lead instrument unless you're, Bron Daler on In the Eyes of God by Today's the Day. But here it's an interesting twist of the idea of what you would have expected. They do put a lot of reverb on the toms. There's like a boomy, there's like one of the floor toms has a kind of a timpani sound to it, but those super tight kick drums, it's weird. You can hear the pulse of the double bass. He does like these flutters throughout a couple parts of the album where there's just like a burst of the kicks. It's so tight and crisp. It's kind of the opposite of what the music is trying to do. So yeah, I can agree with Kellen in that point too. But somehow, with all of its flaws, it kind of come up pretty excellent. But let's talk about least favorite songs. Lee, we'll start with you.
Oh. I should have been more prepared. I know that... Look, I don't think there's a least favorite song. I mean, because I'm not looking at it as I'm looking at the album as a whole. I'm not looking at the album as this track by track. I'm not looking at it going, oh, that would have been a great single. But I think if I had to say that something was less exciting, you know what I mean? I put that Night Side of Eden, though I still can't remember a female vocal, but only because it brings everything down. It's just a very mellow track, and it just. But again, I'm only saying that just to pick a song that doesn't sound like the rest of them, but it also plays a part where it gives you that time to kind of catch your breath, figure out where you are in this thing, and it's not just this bombardment after every single. So though it's, to me, I skip intros. I hate intros. This is not an intro, but it is something where, for lack of a better thing, it's a stopgap. But it plays an important part because it just gives you time to collect yourself before, the next song, which I'm going to go say is my favorite song, only because I like the way I've been pummeled for a half an hour. I get 2 minutes of rest time, and then I'm straight into, what's that song? Is it The Burial of Ornans? I believe is the song right after that. And then you are back in the game again, and you're refreshed and you're ready to go. And I think that one just stands out to me because when I'm listening to it, it's being like curb stomped for 30 minutes, and then the guy has to go and change his shoes. So you're going like, oh man, my jaw's kind of, could give that a rest. And then the next one is right back into it, and it's like, oh, here we go again. So it gives you time to appreciate that heaviness of the next just 7 minutes of heavy. I also, because that song stuck out to me just because it was after that, I was like, let's have a look at what the song is. Because I was like, well, what's Ornans? I don't know if any of you guys have, had a look and see what that is.
I never look at lyrics.
Okay, so I was interested just to see. So I figured I'd come out, nothing like sitting in a panel like you guys and not having anything smart to say. So pretend I didn't.
I do it every week.
All right, so
whatever.
I've already had my humiliation on the Friday show. Let me not fuck this up. So Ornans is a place in France, very picturesque place in France. And the song takes the picturesque place in France, which I'm going to go ahead and tell everyone that it's in the mountainside. It probably isn't. I'm just making that part up. But there's an empty grave in this picturesque town. And, that's what the song is. And I'm like, that's kind of a creepy thing to have a really slow burn song go through. Why is this empty grave? Like, there's an apocalyptic feeling or theme that's also in this song where it's like, almost like a Cthulhu or whatever the fuck you guys say, a Lovecraftian type of idea that's in it. Something's going on in this very quiet town, and I think that's gorgeous. That's gorgeous because you have the beautiful landscapes with this dark, unseen evil, which I think is that's right up my alley. So, I mean, I got to say Burial of Ornans just because I looked more into that song than any of the other ones. But I love this album. To me, this is meditation. This is but going to see a great movie, and it's, you know, a Lord of the Rings with all, you know, great storylines and all the whole thing. I love the immersiveness of this album. So I'm not looking at it song by song by song. I just picked that one because it's after a slow one, and I got to do it to fulfill the question.
Right on.
You know?
All right, Kellen.
Yeah. So, I mean, I pretty much, I would imagine all of us are going to have a similar kind of answer to Lee, in the sense that I really enjoy when we get an album with just kind of 7 tracks here. And you made a point, Marty, there's sort of 3 major pillars on this album. And you kind of build around them. It's in the throes of like the Tree of Life, Carillion Transience, and A Burial of Ornans. Like, those are your pillars here. I think that each of them sort of offer a journey that you kind of have to commit to, and help sort of elevate this record. I really, though, if I have to like say the Thrones of Ivory and Spirit of Tall Hills, I really enjoyed them on this listen. And I guess if I'm going to narrow this down to kind of 2 tracks, I just think they do something that, like, this is 93, that they tap into something that kind of feels a bit more on that, what do you want to call it, 4AD, or a bit of the gothic thing, or that sort of dark wave world music, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
That I never really locked into the same way with like the Peaceville 3. Like, it's such a unique way to approach death doom on there. They hit all those notes, but it doesn't feel as predictable or sort of formulaic. And I really appreciate that. So those tracks, I think, are the ones that I'm going to sort of highlight as ones that I would immediately go back and just kind of study how well they incorporate all that sort of clean guitar work. There's greater sort of vocal variation in there. I think that it isn't the same kind of, I want to like very well defined doom riffing to the same extent. So anyway, all of those reasons, I think those are the 2 that stand out for me. I talked about how Night Side of Eden and that rolls into Ornan's Spirit of Tall Hills, the beginning of that specifically with the chimes. I like that trio, that moment. We kind of get almost like a half an hour of music. The one that I feel is like the interesting sort of loner on this listen is the 3rd track. I think Excoriate is sort of the standout amongst all of them that are a bit more long, drawn out listens. So if I have to pick like a worse song, like that be it, but there's nothing wrong about the song, and I don't want to change anything or take anything away from this record. You know, it's almost an hour long, and there are a lot of sort of funeral, death, doom records that sort of navigate this time frame. I don't find that this is taxing in the same way.
Agreed.
Like every time I feel emotionally challenged, they find a way to reward me for it. So I think that payoff is probably why I don't like the idea of pulling anything off of this. More specifically, they're the 4-minute song that has still some interesting things to offer. There's not a single other track here that sounds like it. And it doesn't feel, though, like pulled from a different genre or a failed idea from an old record or something that they're going to do into the future. Like, it fits here. It sounds like Disembowelment. So like I'm just going to echo kind of what Lee had to say is like, I don't want to change anything from this record. You're going to listen to it for the entirety of the listen. Probably the best part of it is sort of the trajectory that it follows. So yeah, there's no bad songs here by any means.
Yeah, the trajectory and the closure that it gives you at the end too. I just want to put, anyway, before I forget, Sorry, Logan.
What Marty said, yeah. No, I mean, no least favorite tracks on here. And honestly, very tough to figure out a favorite as well, because I think every song belongs on this album and is part of the flow. Like, the flow is so well done. The tracks really feed off of each other, and like the energy and the movements and the momentum like carry. And I think each decision made on one track impacts, the next one. Like, for example, that 30-minute section that Kellen talked about of Night Side of Eden into Burial at Ornans, and then the Spirit of the Tall Hills. Just that's a perfect, just transition of energy from one song to the next, like that, the respite into the heavy bleakness into a more somber but almost uplifting tone. Just, yeah. And the whole album is kind of structured like that to me. It starts out with the Tree of Life and Death, which honestly an absolute great way to start the album, because it comes right out the gate with this like death metal supremacy. It's just a wall of crushing riffs and drums and everything. And then 30 seconds in, that's when you get the first like odd, Dead Can Dance, clean singing, clean guitar like notes that are just like raining down on you. And that's only there for like 10 seconds before it just goes right back into like, blast beats. And then one of the best old school death metal riffs I've ever heard comes in at like the minute and 35 mark, and you're just off to the races at that point. Like, for a doom metal album to do that much legwork in only a minute and a half is amazing. And like, that's just the perfect example of what you're in store for the whole of the album. And just to quickly mention the last little bit of A Tree of Life and Death, they bring back that like descending clean melodies at 8 minutes 52 seconds, except with like more intense blast beats. And I don't know, Tree of Life and Death, absolutely perfect way to start the album. Could be one of my favorite tracks. But then your Prophetic Throne of Ivory, it's got this like very lackadaisical, almost loose and jazzy kind of melody that plays over top in the beginning, and it's kind of feels uncomfortable, and it's a little weird, and doesn't feel like it meshes fully. And then it just continues to build, and like these melodies just ricochet off one another. And then finally, within like the last minute and a half, you get the clean vocals in the back, and the track kind of all falls into place. And it's just a well done, well orchestrated track. That could be my favorite track on the album. I mean, and then it just goes from there. I like the pairing of Excoriate and Night Side of Eden right there in the middle. Kellen did a good job of summing up Excoriate. Like, to me, it's like the death metal side of this album kind of focused on for 4 minutes. Like, you got that brutality in there, and then it's just juxtaposed with the beauty of Night Side of Eden, which is the Dead Can Dance section, and you get the breath of fresh air before being pulverized by Burial at Ornans. I'm saying it like a southerner. Ornans.
Ornans.
That place in France, Ornans. Absolutely crushing. We've definitely talked about this song a lot. Ornans could be my favorite, but it's, is it Ornans?
Ornans.
Or is it Ornans? Was it Ornans?
I have no idea.
Okay, cool. Well, but
I prefer the southern pronunciation. Keep that one going for the rest.
Yeah. New Orleans.
I'll mention. Yeah, I'll mention it again. I'm sure. Let's see. It definitely. I just love the first 7 minutes. Is just all pulverizing. Just funeral doom. To me, it's a funeral doom song, and then you get that like death metal break, and it's that's how you pronounce it. Thank you, Miss A. And then it's just. It makes it all worth it. Could be my favorite song. And then, yeah, Spirit of the Tall Hills kind of follows suit with just, it's to me, it's a mirror track of the Throne of Ivory, where it's like doing a similar thing where it's like building upon, like these melodies throughout its runtime. And it's, yeah, absolutely gorgeous. And
he is living in New Orleans after all.
There's some French around here. I'm just picking up from them. I'm sorry. It's where I do my learning. But no, the closing song is absolutely the chef's kiss, and I think, you know, the perfect release, and you just feel that tension being let loose even in the first moments of it, and it just continues. It's beautiful and haunting, and I don't know, the way it opens, it feels like a harp. Like, I don't know if that is like
It might be, or a dulcimer. I
but it
wrote
feels
down
like
dulcimer.
a dulcimer, yeah,
Yeah.
some kind of like stringed instrument, and it's just a very haunting way to close out the album. And I'm just saying, the way that they open it up with like the pulverizing death metal of the Tree of Life and Death, and then close it with this Carillion Transience is just so, yeah, it's just the perfect contrast, and I think ties everything together perfectly. So yeah, no least favorites, and all kind of no favorites as well. It's just all you need to experience the whole thing.
Right. And again, yeah, I agree with Lee and everybody's sentiment on the fact that it feels bad to pick a best song, because I really take this album as a whole. There's nothing, I mean, if you were to pull a song off of it and just listen to it, it would still be a killer track. And I don't feel like any of the songs on here feel lesser. Obviously, the big focus is on the three big songs. That Tree of Life and Death fires this thing off, and I feel this song has probably the most variety. You're getting all the elements that the album has to offer kind of on this album. In a way, it's a bit chaotic, but you know, starts off frantic blast beats. You got the rolling double bass supported riffs. Then the track starts to gradually deconstruct. Gets slower. They're starting to get into more of a dirge, and the effect laden melody lines, they almost sound like synth lines. How they have, you know, that clean line with all the effects on it. It sounds like a synth line, and it really gives an ethereal gothic vibe, which I think is the frosting on this cake for sure. But then they establish this, and then they explode back into the blast beats, kind of like with flipping a light switch. Kind of takes you out of the spell, and they play with you a lot on this song. A lot of up and downs with this track. I think Prophetic Throne of Ivory is my favorite song on the album. Very eerie start to it. I like how it starts off kind of drifting and bludgeoning, but then there's like this melodious chanting along to the clean reverb drenched guitar line. It's very impactful emotion. They're taking these super simple musical lines and really unlocking a different world with it. And I think it's moments like this that are the really, truly special moments on the record. And they do it a lot. And there's a great balance between, you know, there's blast beats on this song as well. And then there's the pounding dirge. It's just a well-balanced way they go through it. Granted, the journey throughout the track gets a bit disjointed at times. I think that it all kind of boils back down to like a bludgeoning crunch at the heart of it. So that's kind of your anchor point holding a lot of these songs together. That Exoriate is kind of like a dirge-like heaviness. Good shit. It's pure melancholy at times, desperate vocal moans throughout it. That is just hearing them just like, oh, all that reverb. It's like, oh, you can just feel the misery on it. In the blast beats in this one, always kind of resurface to kind of rescue you from the din, you know. Nice Side of Eden. This track, I want the album that whatever album, you know, artist influenced them. If I don't own it, I want to have it. It's, you know, the one non-metal track on the album. You got female narration. She's kind of buried in the reverb, so you can just kind of hear her chattering. You can't really understand what she's saying because there's like two clean guitar lines swimming in reverb, kind of dueling with each other. It's very hypnotic. The track makes me feel small. It makes me feel like I'm, you know, in a place where I'm supposed to be really quiet and respectful of what's going on around me. Puts me in a weird mental space, but there's a lush, beautiful quality to this song. I wish it was longer. And I wrote in my notes, I wish it was longer and more thought out into like a proper full track. But yeah, I mean, what comes after it is a Burial at Ornans, which is, you know, you get the beauty of the track before it, and they hurl you right back into despair on this track. 14 minutes, 38 seconds long. Unsettling intro, and it goes into the most sparse riff on the album. The note strikes on this one almost feel random, like they're struggling to find a beat or a time signature. Feels like this is the moment on the album where it feels like pure sludge mixed with funeral doom. It kind of gives you a suffocating feeling, which is one that you really haven't experienced yet on the album. So there, if there is a concept here, the protagonist is being oppressed severely on this track. But like all these songs, it eventually builds back with some momentum, but then they take it away and they go back even slower. So it's just they crush you with simplistic power, and they do it quite effectively on here. Yeah. The Spirits of the Tall Hills, another favorite of mine as well. I had to document the wind chimes because it's an instrument made to feel like chimes. I don't know. It's kind of distant the way it sounds, but it's kind of called upon a childhood nostalgia for me. And there's like a very familiar ambience about it, which it kind of made you feel a little secure for a moment, and then they kind of lead in with that special clean guitar sound, kind of gives you a gothic-like melody accompanied by clean chanting. Again, more of this. This is awesome. This is just a very cool characteristic to tag on or make part of your songs. Blast beats. It enters this otherwise really quiet musical moment in the song. It kind of throws everything off the rails. It's like the drummer's like, I'm putting a blast beat here. Screw these guys. I'm doing it here. I'm doing it now. And it's like, it feels like he's teetering in and out of falling apart, but it's disorienting, but it's like a cool alteration from their formula here. The last song, that song starts and you're so battered and beaten by the time you get here. It feels like, oh my God, they're going even slower here. Wow. Just really crush us into the pavement with this one. But then at the end, they offer us this, what did I say here? Yeah, the synth links up. They don't have any really synth work on the album, but there's a synth line on this song, and it links up with more of a steady and upbeat riff and time signature, some double bass on it. The song at this point moves in a way that the entire album really hasn't yet at this point. So, and it feels a bit hopeful, which is after, some of the weight that's been pressed upon your shoulders. It's kind of nice to get that feeling of freedom or release at the end of the album. So yeah, the crescendo of the record is a simple synth line. It's interesting. It's interesting how they pick that to be the closing statement on the album. But yeah, wow. An hour-long Doom foundational album that I wish there was more. And I don't often say that. Judgment, final thoughts, Logan.
Yeah, I mean, this is a special, unique album for sure. There's no way around it. A one of one. I think heavily influential, seldom properly replicated. I really can't think of another release that's actually recreated the feeling and the experience that you get from listening to this hour-long release. I mean, it's just, there's so much intentionality here. To me, it feels like intentionality as you're going through it. I could see how there's definitely a drunk Australian theory out there. That could be it. But I'm going to go with that is an intentional placement of everything to build this like tension and this ebb and flow and the light and dark, contrast of this release. And, I think it ultimately ends up being a lot more on that darker side, which of course is all fine with me. And yeah, it's vast. There's a lot of variety. And as you're saying, it's an hour. But it's not a chore to listen to.
No.
It's the hour goes quick, and there's all these different crevices and caverns and other like details to explore that you've missed, no matter probably how many times you've listened to it. So a lot to unpack, but the scope and the eclectic focus of this album is a part of, I think, the enduring spirit of it. So yeah, I was very happy to be able to give this the full album club experience. I think it definitely deserves that. It's not one of those where you just absorb it casually over months to a year. And yeah, if there's one negative to it, you're not pulling this thing out all the time. This is sits on the shelf. It's a special occasion. You're feeling down. You're feeling, like sitting with a high alcohol beer or something, or going on a long walk. And
it's not a top down, wind in your dying follicles type of album.
Like, hey gang, it's a summer night. Let's
party.
Spin some Disembowelment. This is an intense album that will give you a lasting impression, and that is somewhat of a con, but then it's also a pro. But for me, definitely like one of those. It's like 9 to a 9.5 out of 10. Definitely a classic and well deserving of the album club treatment.
Lee,
I'm going to be a little bit selfish here and change what I think of it. So, I mean, how I judge this. So I've sat here and I've watched the album club many times, and I've watched albums that I don't like, and I've watched albums that I don't know. And, we go out and I listen to you guys talk, and eventually it's like, oh shit, I gotta hear this now, and I buy it. Now I judge an album on, does it pique my interest enough, not only to spin it a few times on, YouTube or whatever streaming platform that I've got at the time, but then do I reach into my wallet and I go and pay for it. And this is one of those ones where, I went out and I was expecting to pay big bucks because I thought it's one of those albums where everyone loves it. And I've always kind of looked at Relapse and, maybe they're not repressing stuff, but, I was lucky enough to find one on Amazon, $30. It's a great price. So I bought it, and I think that says a lot. And I know you don't all know me, but I mean, like, for me to reach into my pocket on an album like this, which I came into 30 years ago or whenever I heard it, and pass it off as something that didn't interest me, to hear you guys say I'm going to go and have a look at it. And so I've got to listen to it. If I was sitting on the other side of the screen right now and Jim was sitting in my seat, I still would have gone ahead after listening to you guys talk about it, and I would have checked it out tomorrow. And I think that's not only testament to the show, but it's also testament to an album like this, because this could have gone either way. As soon as I heard the word Doom, I could have switched off and then gone and got my third or fourth beer and just enjoyed the laughs, or I could have tuned in. And I've listened to everyone talk, and everyone's kind of got the same points but different. And that's what I find interesting, and that's what would have made me go out and buy it. I love this album, and it's going to be one, you're right, I'm not going to listen to this going down to the corner store to get my coffee. But when I'm sitting there and I need something just to kind of reset the clock on whatever I've been listening to, this is one of those perfect albums that it'll just give me, I don't know, it gives me something. It gives me a little bit of creativity push, you know what I mean? It says, oh, you don't have to do just Doom. You can put a blast beat in there. You can put a female vocal in there that I'm yet to hear. You could put
maybe it's not on that.
Maybe this is the redid
Night Side of Eden. Is it on there? Anyway,
of course it is. Look at that. So that's in there.
All right,
it's
all
on, in one of the albums. But it's still. It takes a lot, I think, especially now when everyone's got bills and we're all, have to pay them, for us to go, shit, I'm going to forego something and I'm going to go buy this album. So, yeah, I loved it. Yes, it's something that I'll listen to again and again, and I will find something new in it. And that's probably the best thing. If I released an album tomorrow and someone goes, I've heard this album 70 times, and every single time I listen to it, it's got something new. Boom, that's a success, regardless of if it sold 4 copies or 4,000 copies or 1 million. It's like, that's the best compliment that you can get. And this album does that. And I don't get that off too many albums. And So I thank you guys, but obviously I thank my countrymen for putting out an album that I neglected, and now I've picked up much later after they've all split up. And can I also add that they never played one live show?
No.
Never played one live show. They split up after this album because it was like, we're not fucking with this. We're not going to try and ruin this by putting out something new. Relapse signed them on the back of a demo, and they were a complete studio band. And that's phenomenal for the 90s too, right? Mm-hmm. So hats off to them. If you're in this chat and you haven't heard it and you're like me sitting there hitting a few beers, tomorrow, please just put a few songs on and just take the time and listen to it. I think it's an amazing album. And I'm not a Doom fan. Not much of a death metal fan. Not stuff like this. So I think, everyone can find something in this that's like, wow, that's fucking awesome.
Right on. Kellen.
Yeah, it's a classic record. I would be curious, I was trying to think of bands who've only had sort of a demo or EP, a single full length, and have had this much influence. I think, the other one that immediately comes to mind, Logan showed Thurgothan earlier, another band that just had a single full length, yet helped to sort of spawn an entire world of music, genre of music. So I think Disembowelment kind of goes into that spot. And I would be interested, in the same way because of that. Like to the kind of the point made when I first discovered them, they were not the first death metal band, but I would be curious now if you were to talk or sort of poll like a list of essential death metal records that you would have to get to. I think wherever Disembowelment was when I first kind of got into the music at the beginning of end of the 90s or the 2000s, they've crept up that list. I think this is probably an increasingly more relevant and influential record now, some 33 years later after its release. That more people have discovered this record and its sort of value and importance to doom or death metal, however you want to place them, I think has grown significantly through the years. And I'm happy that more people are getting a chance to hear them, and that we got a chance to cover them tonight. It is, like, in terms of a creative output, one of like a classic. Wherever, I don't know where entry you want to position them. I always heard them as a death metal band. If you want to call them doom, that's fine. But like in terms of what death metal or doom metal can do in terms of creative content, I think it's a high watermark. Wherever you want to place them. It's a great record from the 90s that I think builds off of things that were happening in the 80s in a way that is unexpected and interesting and nuanced. Incorporates part of like goth and in a way that is chef's kiss. Amazing record. If you have not heard it by now, this is your first time getting exposure to this record. For sure, grab it. You will not be disappointed.
Yeah. Basically ditto to all that. And the fact that, 33 years later, it still sounds so fresh and kind of new. And that's why I would get mad hearing Spectral Voice, like, let's throw some Disembowelment riffs in there. It felt cheap and forced, same with Worm. Including that sound, certainly it works. I mean, I see why they do it, but again, this feels like a special album. And just to kind of freely rate it for your own devices is kind of cheap and lame, I think. But this record, I think it's awesome. I think it's world building. And I tend to gravitate towards albums like that, albums that have a feeling to them. It takes you out of your reality into a different one. Granted, the reality you're in this one may not be very comfortable, but I think it's a very powerful album, and It defies convention, and the fact that they do so without it sounding forced. I mean, you listen to some early Anathema, they kind of mess with the lady sing the Gothic elements. They're like, oh, here's the Gothic song. Or it never felt like it was truly interwoven into the fibers of their music, where, Disembowelment somehow did that. And very cool. It could have, we mentioned the Peaceful 3. It doesn't fit with that group, but I think they kind of more effectively channeled the spirit of what that group was trying to do with this record without sounding like them. So there's a lot of pluses here. The songs are timeless. If you're a patient music listener, I would recommend just diving into this. Again, if you're looking for a cheap, world rock and thrill, you're going to hate it. It's just going to be over your head. But Lee's already a testament to the fact that you can find cheap copies out there if you're, it's still available. So that's good. Check it out. And thank you definitely for everybody for doing your homework this week. And Lee, for joining us. We really appreciate you being here. Who's picking next week? Kellen? Logan?
I got something handy, yeah. So it's funny how Album Club works, right? Because originally I actually had I had a very heavy, dark doom metal album slated for this week. Wouldn't you know, I'm not putting any poor Lost album to compare with Disembowelment, because that's a slaughter.
I forgot about that Lost thing. God, you just brought it all back. That was an angry week. I hated that record.
See, and you gave us Disembowelment, so thank you, Marty, for that. So I'm going in the exact opposite direction. From an hour-long album, we're going to one that's less than 20 minutes. Let's do some grindcore. Wormrot with Dirge. So from Singapore.
So we're going to try next week to have a 20-minute long episode.
It better be. If it's longer than this album, I'll be disappointed.
Yeah, if you can listen to the album 4 times to us rambling about it, there's a problem. There's a definite problem. Wormrot, what's the name of it again?
Dirge.
It's a Wormrot Dirge. All right. Awesome. Lee, again, thank you, kind sir, for filling in for Jim. We appreciate you. And what do you have coming up in your activities that you want to promote?
What are we doing? We got the Sunday show. We're not really sure what's going on with that yet. We're still trying to find something. Saturdays, myself and Miss A, we do just a kind of a fly by the seat of our pants just to try and fill some time. We have found some love in playing really bad music now, which thank you for being a part of. And we have a bit of a chuckle at that. We figured, there's too many metal channels. Let's do the worst of the worst. So Marty found out how to clear a room. Thank you for that. We had some fun with it. So we might go on to, we're thinking about Failed. You know the recorder? Remember, did everyone play that in school?
My kid did. And I wanted to murder whoever at school thought that was a great idea.
Every time I hear someone play the recorder, I laugh inside. I'm so I'm so entertained by that thing. So now we're gonna do failed recorder songs. We think that's just a stupid idea for a Saturday night. So we may do that, but that could change. But yeah, we do a Saturday show. We do something through the week. Obviously the album club, I love doing that. And then Sunday, we've got something there, but I'm not much of a promoter. We do still have the fundraiser for the poor lady that got paralyzed. That'll be the last day on Sunday. I think at the moment we're over $600, which is amazing because we were not that far past our $100 on the first week. So we've really kicked that up. So thank you to everyone who donated, and we'll be doing the last day on Sunday just for shits and giggles. But thank you again for inviting me. This is one of the shows that obviously I've never been on the Wednesday. I hope I did you proud.
Oh, hell
Jim,
yeah.
I hope he's not face palming and just going, oh my God, who's this fucking idiot?
Nah.
So thanks, Jim. I will fill in for you anytime. I kept your seat warm.
Right on. Cheers. And Logan, what you got going on? Anything?
I've been putting off a lot of stuff. Got to get hopefully something nailed down with Rick for the next Sabbatherium hour, and then a video of my own that I'm working on always. So.
Right on. Kellen, you're still in house limbo, so
Yes, house limbo indeed. But hopefully by the time, you will know when I have a better idea as when I move into a home. I will show that off, but we'll get there eventually.
Can't wait. As far as metallurgy notes, Friday, we've got Charlie Anderson from Weft joining us, along with John Cobbett from Hammers of Misfortune, Lord Weird Sluffeg, Ludicra, bunch of stuff. He's got a new electronic project coming out we're going to talk about for a bit. And we're going to slide into the topic, bands that defy convention, which I guess what we talked about tonight could probably slide into that slot as well. So it'd be good to have John and Charlie on. And we'll see you Friday for that. And I think Saturday I'm going to be doing the 7th episode of Radio Metallurgy at 5 o'clock Eastern. My kid worked pretty hard picking the entire playlist for me, so looking forward. I haven't really looked at what he chose, so it'll be kind of fun to go through what he worked hard at it too. He worked harder on the playlist than he did in math in probably 2 years. So I'm just saying this better dazzle the shit out of me. Yeah, but
has it got any henge on it?
No.
No hinge.
He hates that tardigrade song. I play it for him and he's like, "Is this a kid show thing?" I'm like, "Shut up, it's awesome." But yeah, anyway, cheers everybody. Thanks again, Lee.
Thank
you all rule. We will see you next week with this group. See you Friday. Have a great one. Bye.